I'm just going to mess up all your microphones. And so, and by the way, I've been to Woodstock. I have my Janis Joplin mug, so we're all good. And so, but a lot of people have a lot of confusion about who are the Hasidic people. Is it even possible to share the gospel with the Hasidic people? How to reach the Hasidic people? What do we do about the Hasidic people? So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Let's see if this works. There we go. But a little bit, just a little bit about me and my background, because I don't look like the typical missionary to the Hasidic people. This is the first family picture of me included in the Downey family pantheon. I'm the cute one with the baby mohawk. This was taken about March of 1970. I was born September 3rd, 1969, so if you're doing your math, I'm 55, which means I get free drinks at Whataburger. And on the first Tuesday of every month, I can go to Walgreens and get my 20% off, which, hey, I am fine with that. So, but I was born, my dad was not yet a Baptist pastor, but shortly before my 4th birthday, Daddy surrendered to the ministry, and that little family of 4 became a minister's family. I became a Baptist preacher's kid. And we moved from our home in Farmington, New Mexico, where I was born. Somebody's from New Mexico. Okay. And we moved to Louisville, Kentucky. Okay, nobody knows. And for Daddy to go to Bible college. And between then and the time I graduated in high school, I went to 11 different schools because Baptists don't keep their preachers very long. And so we moved all over the country. I went to high school in western Oklahoma and graduated in somebody went, woo. And because in my high school graduating class was all of 20. And we lived in Texas for a while. And so I've lived everywhere. So moving to New York in January of 2000 was not that big of a deal for me. My grandparents, a big deal, but not for me. And this is actually the last picture of my mom, myself, and my dad, because a few months later, my dad died at the age of 66 with an abdominal aneurysm. But he got to see his baby daughter surrender to missions that she actually had surrendered to at the age of 16, but she ran from because of the cost involved. And so that's my mom and myself and my dad in the last picture I got to take with my dad. But I moved to New York. I worked for Chosen People, as the introduction talked about, and I worked there, and I got to have a passion for the Hasidic people, but no way to do it. And I moved back to Texas. I began to take care of my mom in the latter years of her life, but the burden for the Hasidic people never left me. And so I moved, after Mama died in 20, I was able to move back to New York. And this is an interactive presentation. You guys are going to talk too. Because when I moved back to New York City, back to Western New York, I moved close to a town, and some of you might have heard of it, called Curious Joel. How many of you have ever heard of Curious Joel? Nobody. Okay, good. So I could lie to you and you wouldn't know it, but I promise you I won't lie. This is about an hour from where I live, and this town of Curious Joel, New York, is made up completely, the entire population of the town is made up of Hasidic or ultra-Orthodox Jewish people of the Satmar sect. And so I was driving through this town one day, or driving on the edge of this town one day, And I was able to take this picture at a red light. Now, there is one guy here. Whoa. I did your step down, Mr. Fournier. There's one guy at this step. I think you can see him. He's right there. But the rest are women and children. Now, I won't make you count the number of children, but let's just say, I'll tell you the number in just a minute. Are there a lot of children in this picture? Yes. There's 32 of them. I counted. Can you kind of tell how many women are in the picture? There's 4. So there's 4 women, 32 children, which fits the average of how many children are in a Hasidic or ultra-Orthodox family. Because the average number of children are between 8 and 14. How many children, ma'am, did you have? Yes, 6. Would wanted to have had 8 more? Oh, she did. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm not going to ask her any more questions. Okay. But how many of the rest of you women would have wanted to have had 14 children? Okay, there's a couple of you. Okay. I'm not going to ask these 2 ladies either. But the average number of children in Hasidic families are between 8 and 14. That's a lot of children. So you have 1 mom, 2 moms. There's a 3rd mom, and then back behind is a holding a child. That's the 4th mom. Now, a couple of more pictures I want to show you. You have, and they're kind of blurred here the way it looks. You have a lot of men over here, and the picture didn't show up because of the size of the screen, but you have a group of women. There's only one woman who shows up here, but they always keep the sexes segregated. The men are always together, the women are always together. There's a reason for that. What are the men doing during the day? Praying, studying at the yeshiva, studying not the Torah. They will talk about we're studying the Torah, but they're not studying the Torah. What are they studying? The Mishnah, the Gemara, the Talmud. They're not studying the Torah. They're studying the Talmud, which tells them what the Torah says. What are the women doing? Taking care of the children, obviously, and everything else. They're the ones who are working. They're the ones who are, usually they are working in New York, they are working at Amazon or clerical jobs. And I'll get to the reason why in just a moment. But in where I live, Amazon hires Hasidic women by the boatload. Or clerical jobs in real estate companies, because there's a few Hasidic men who are into real estate. But the majority of the Hasidic men are studying at the yeshiva, studying the Talmud, while the women are shopping, raising the children, working, taking care of the homes. That is their life. Another picture. Let's talk about this picture over here for a second. This is probably from the time I took the picture. This was on a Shabbos afternoon. This is a young couple. They are probably on a shidduch. Do you know what a shidduch is? A date. Very good. They are on a date. They're seeing if they can be a match. Now, I have a couple of problems. I was raised in the South. The man should be on the side of the road, walking on the other side, but that's just, I was raised in the South. What else do you notice about this picture? He's behind her, or she's behind him. What else do you notice? They're not touching. I'm sorry, I didn't hear. They're not looking at each other. What else? There is no chaperone because, so this is probably their second or third date, which I'll get to in a second. One other thing. She's carrying the bag. Because he's not allowed to carry anything on the Sabbath. So if anything has to be carried, she has to carry it. Now, the reason I said this is probably their second or third date, because in a shidduch, they have between 1 and 3 dates, and then they can say, we can make this work, because the yenta, the matchmaker, makes the match. They get together. They probably have never met each other because they keep the genders apart. They might know of each other, but they've never met each other. They have between 1 and 3 dates. The young man, the young woman go, okay. The parents say, it's a match. You know what? The next time they'll see each other? At the wedding. Somebody asked why. Did somebody ask why? So they don't have time to change their mind.
How soon after?
Probably 3 to 6 months. Now this picture, and you can only see the top half of the picture. I'll mention the bottom half that you can't see. This is taken at a kosher bakery. It's a really good kosher bakery, by the way. Probably about 4 miles from my house. They have amazing arugula, by the way. What are some things you notice about these women? Yes, they are. Yes, their hair is covered. They're wearing wigs. Because the day after their wedding, the mamas come in, woof, army clip their hair. Because the only person who will ever see any hair on their head ever again is their husband. Why? Do you know why? Because the idea is their hair or their head belongs to him. Now, some sects, some of the more, and we often think about ultra-Orthodox and all of that as being very restrictive, very strict, but there are some sects that are even more strict. The Lubavitch, which we've had, there's a Chabad house not too far from here. That's the more liberal of the ultra-Orthodox. These are probably Lubavitch women. The Satmar sect, and I'll explain that in just a minute about where they get their names. The Satmar women shave their heads once a month, so no hair ever grows back. And they wear the snoods. What else do we notice about them? By the way, this was taken in, I think this was taken in July. So it was taken last October. Long sleeves. Can I pick on you for just a moment?
Yeah.
What's your name again?
Michelle.
Michelle. Michelle would be considered a rebellious woman because her elbows are showing. Because elbows and knees are considered, we're all adults, sexy. Trust me, there is nothing sexy about this elbow. And also, the clavicle must not show. So yes, you are a rebellious woman. So it must be covered from here to at least here, sometimes all the way down to your ankles. She's covering up now. We're all, yeah. Now you cannot see. You don't have to cover up. Now you cannot see because of the picture, because of the way it's showing on the screen. There's something else that's very particular about the ultra-Orthodox sects. Does anyone know, because you can't see the below their waist in this picture? They are wearing pantyhose. They are wearing stockings. Even more than pantyhose, they're wearing stockings. And depending upon the sect, the more strict the sect, the darker the stocking. And some of the most restrictive of the sects have a seam up the back, like in the 1940s, and to prove that they are wearing stockings. Okay, a couple. You can't see this. It's because of the size of the screen. This is a billboard about 4 miles from my house, and it's about talking about the children of these sects who are leaving because they just can't deal with the rules. So they are leaving, and they are saying to the billboard is saying, don't let them leave, because if they leave, they will go out into the world, and they cannot, and there's Yiddish at the bottom, and they will, because we cannot let our children leave, because if they leave, we will lose them to God. You know, they will leave God. Because they have been told all their life, if you leave, and am I loud enough for all of you? Okay. If you leave,
You can hold that microphone if you want.
can you hear me?
Not really.
Okay, I'll get behind here. I like to move around. If you leave, you will lose God. You will get on drugs, and you will turn to a life of sexual debauchery. Because that's what happens out in their world. And I've had, don't worry about trying to fix the picture, it's okay. And so I have 3 friends. They're not deep friends, they're not close friends, but they're acquaintance friends who have left. And one of them did turn to drugs, but all 3 of them are now atheists. Because they were told, you can't have God. If you leave the ultra-Orthodox, if you leave the Hasidim, you have to leave God. And they're like, okay, we can't live like this anymore. We'll leave God as well. And so they did. And I've had conversations with all 3 of them, 2 men, 1 woman. I've had conversations with all 3 of them about, did you know that there was this guy named Yeshua in the middle that you could have turned to? And they said, well, then can we still be Jewish? Because they were also told that if you leave Hasidim, or if you leave our sect, you have to leave God. But you definitely cannot believe in Yeshua. They won't, by the way, they won't say the name Yeshua at all. And I'll just go on past that picture, it's okay. But let me explain before we go on too much farther, just very quickly, what is my personal theology of missions? Because obviously I'm a missionary. So what do I believe about missions? Well, this is my personal theology of missions. Missions begins locally. You have a kabod house just streets away from you. But missions is about locally. You know, I cannot do what I do even in New York unless you guys are involved with missions here. You know, when Yeshua gave the Great Commission, he says it's about starting here and then expanding. So you can't just sit here and send somebody else out to do your work. You have to do the work too. And when Paul, and by the way, I share this presentation at churches a lot. I'm doing this at a church tomorrow, in fact. And I always remind them that when Paul went out on his missionary journeys, even though Paul is the missionary to the Gentiles, that even though he went and established all of these churches, even when he went to Thessalonica and to Colossae and to Ephesus, he always first went to the synagogues because he believed into the Jew first and also to the Gentiles. So missions begins locally, and it begins to the Jewish people first. And that is the reason why we are not doing a better job of reaching the world with the gospel anywhere. It's because we forgot to the Jew first, and we forgot to involve the local congregations and the local church. And I also believe that a lot, not just Jewish people, but all people have been so damaged by fake Christians that they have problems believing in the real Jesus or the real Yeshua. So we have to show them the love of the real Yeshua and be real believers in Jesus if we're ever going to reach the real world with the gospel. So that's why that is my theology of missions. And I don't think a lot of missionaries take the time to explain that when they come and share. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to explain that. So what are some tensions that Hasidic people have within themselves and towards us? Because you need to understand that. Up to 90% of all Hasidic people in the world were destroyed in the Holocaust. Because I told you that I would explain why there's the Satmar sect and the Lubavitch sect. And there's other sects called like the Bobov and the Ger and the Pupa. And all sorts of different sects. Well, they're all named after the town from which they came from in Romania, in Hungary, in Poland, in Eastern Europe, in the Ukraine, in Russia. And what happened in the Ukraine, in Romania, in Hungary, in Poland, in Russia, in Lithuania during World War II? They were killed. I share this, and I shared this with a congregation on Wednesday night, a church on Wednesday night in Waxahachie. Oops. And they couldn't believe it. I found this at an antique store in Kansas. And this is a Nazi belt buckle. And on this Nazi belt buckle is the words, Gott mit uns. And I don't know if any of you know your German. What does it say? Somebody said, I do. Oh, 9. Gott mit uns is German for God with us. And so this was what the Jewish people saw in the camps. This is what the 10% of the Hasidim, the Haredim, it's potato, saw. And so they are taught, and I'll mention this again, they are taught that Christians, believers in Jesus, hate them because of what they saw in the camps, what their grandparents, their great uncles, their great aunts saw in the camps. And most of the Hasidim do not believe in the modern state of Israel. They will live in what they call the Holy Land. They will not call it Israel. Because only the Messiah can establish the modern Israel. No Messiah, no Israel. And so they do not call what is today Israel, they do not call it Israel. They call it the Holy Land. They'll live there, they won't fight for it. And so most Hasidic children do not have an education that is functional to live outside in the outside world. The average Hasidic young man in an average day has 15 minutes of science, 15 minutes of math, 15 minutes of English, 15 minutes of history a day. Can you learn enough to live outside with that? A girl gets more because she has to work at Amazon and is a secretary. They don't trust us because they're fearful of us, because of what happened in World War II. They're isolated. But a lot of young people are leaving, but they're leaving to what? They're willing to take the chance of drugs and alcohol and sex because they want what they call a life. And then there's the question of where is the Messiah already, and who is the Messiah already? And many of you know about the Lubavitch, who they believe that their dead rabbi who died in 1994 is still the Messiah. And you can go to Queens, New York in June of every year, and thousands upon thousands of the Lubavitch sect will go to his grave, and they will wait on June 13th of every year and wait at his grave to see if this is the year he will arise from the dead and proclaim that he is the Messiah. And he died in 1994, and he was 94 years old when he died. And the other sects don't even know who the Messiah might be. But still they wait. And then, so how in the world do we even reach them for the Messiah? How do we share the love of Yeshua with them? Because I'm going to give you a statistic at the end. Well, these are some of the ways that Tzedakah Ministries that I have started to try to reach out to them with the gospel. If you can see, I'm not going to try to step over again because that kind of hurt for a second. We had this as a billboard in where I live, because I forgot to tell you something. I told Michelle and her friend who's visiting here today. Every year, I live, as I told you, I live in the Catskill regions, but every year, every summer, about 100,000 or even more of the Hasidic Jews of Brooklyn decide 85 degrees is too hot. Y'all would love 85 degrees in the summer. They get up and they move to where I live. And there's usually about 10 to 20,000 Hasidic Jews where I live every day. But it suddenly blossoms to about 125,000, and they move to the bungalows By the way, I don't live too far from where Dirty Dancing was filmed. And I live about 20 minutes. And so they moved there, and they lived there all summer. So last summer, we had this billboard up. And it says in Yiddish, Farfosh nicht. Why not? And this bottom line says, isn't it time to cross the bridge, cross the road? And underneath, it takes them to Tzedakah Ministries evangelism website, exploremashiach.com, where we try to answer the 7 basic questions that most every Jewish person has. Can I still be Jewish and believe in Jesus? Where was God in the Holocaust? What is this thing called the incarnation? Can God really become man? What is this Trinity thing that you Christians have? And by the way, it's in English and it's in Yiddish, which is their heart language. And we also have what we call the Rachmamin, which is the Hebrew word for mercy, the Rachmamin outreach. Because you can imagine that if they have 8 to 14 children and they are depending upon the mom who works at Amazon or a clerical job, their finances are a little tight. Now, yes, they get welfare. I'm not going to fib about that. Kiryas Joel is the poorest village in all of New York State. And the other villages close to where I live are some of the poorest places in all of New York. I'm not going to lie, they get help from some of the rabbis. They get assistance under the table. They are still poor. And so, but the Rachmamin outreach tries, and I'll come back to that picture in just a second. We try to provide them school supplies, some food supplies, diapers, snacks, stuff like that for their children. And they know that I am a believer in Yeshua, and they know that I want to share my faith with them. And many of them are just so grateful for help that they'll talk to me. And they are so surprised that a believer in Yeshua is kind to them that they'll take the time to talk to them or talk to me. Because they've never had what they call a Christian believer in Yeshua, believer in Jesus, all synonymous terms. That they're just amazed that a Christian is kind. Because most of the Christians up there are Roman Catholic and they don't like them. They've had Roman Catholics, Christians, whatever, slam the door in their faces. And I'm the one who holds the door open for them and offers to and tells them that their kids are beautiful. And they've never had that happen to them before. One time it was raining, and I was standing by a door, and I was like, I made the joke, if it keeps raining this much, Noah's going to come by with an ark. And this lady looked at me and she goes, true story. I'm watching the clock too. And she said, you believe in Noah? And I went, yeah, I believe in Noah. And then she said, you guys have Noah in your book? I said, yeah, we have Noah in our book. And I didn't say book, I said Bible. I said, yeah, we have Noah in our Bible. And she goes, I didn't know that. Because you see, the Hasidim, the Hasidic have been told that we don't associate with the Hebrew scriptures. That we have the Brit Hadashah, we have the New Testament, but we don't associate with their book, their Bible, their Torah, their Tanakh. One time, I was in Dunkin' Donuts. By the way, there's no such thing as Whataburger in New York, so that was a sacrifice for me to leave Whataburger. So I've had to substitute it for Dunkin' Donuts. And I was having my quiet time, my devotional time, and I was reading out of the book of Joel. And one of the Hasidic ladies came up to me, and I had my English on one side, because it was on my iPad, my English on one side and my Hebrew on the other side. And she goes, "You have Joel?" I said, "Yeah, we have Joel." "Joel's in your book?" I said, "Joel's in our Bible?" "Yes." She goes, "Psalms?" I said, so I turned over to Psalms. I showed her. Because, Hasidic women really only read Psalms. And I showed her. She goes, except Psalm 22, yeah. And so she was like, "Wow, we didn't know that was in your book." I said, "Yeah, we have all of the Hebrew scriptures in our Bible, because none of our books make sense without your books." And she goes, "I didn't know that." Because they have been told we don't associate with the Hebrew scriptures. But see, I have the nickname of the church lady because the rabbi found out what I was doing, and he told them, "Don't talk to the church lady." Because I was making an impact in Curious Joel. And he told them, "If we catch you talking to the church lady, we'll kick your children out of school, and no more shittaks for your children." And it's 10 till 1. I know y'all are watching the clock. But school supplies, food supplies, evangelism materials, because when they are ready, there's a group called Faith Comes by Hearing, and Faith Comes by Hearing has donated the Gospel of Matthew in Yiddish for us to be able to give this to them, and they can listen to it like an iPod. And once they're ready, and if they ever decide they want to leave, we want to offer ESL classes so that they will be able to be more fluent in English. And once they're ready, I have an undergrad in education from East Texas Baptist. I can be able to offer them GED classes so they can have the equivalence of a high school degree, so they can get a better job than Amazon. And then eventually, if they ever we don't have the funds yet, but this is a future dream. If they ever decide they do want to leave, we want to offer a halfway house so they can be able to make a transition to the real world. And what's the purpose? For them to hear the gospel of Yeshua. Now, let me go back. Oh, wait, hold on. I hit the wrong button. What was the picture of the dog? Well, I didn't bring my dog here. My dog's much cuter than that. I have a Chihuahua. He's a 9-pound Chihuahua. He was a rescue dog. I brought his leash. But I have a 9-pound Chihuahua. He needs to lose a little weight. But he's cute. I'll show you a picture later. But he was a rescue. And you know, dogs are not kosher in the Hasidic world. And I was at a church once, and somebody said, "Well, they don't eat dogs, right?" I went, "No." And but dogs are not even kosher for a pet. There's no dogs in a Hasidic family. There's no cats either. And but they're not supposed to even touch dogs. A rabbi in the 17th century decided that. Anyway, and my dog's name is Fievel, by the way. And but I take Fievel because he's a service dog, and I take Fievel with me to Walmart or the post office, and you would be amazed how middle-aged Hasidic men turn into 8-year-old little boys who never got a dog. Because they'll look around to make sure nobody's watching. And they'll say, "Can I pet your dog?" And then I'll explain to them that Fievel was a rescue dog. And they're like, "What's a rescue dog?" And in the process of explaining what a rescue dog is, it dawned on me that rescue is a lot like redemption. And in the process of doing that, and this is just a template, I don't have any printed up yet, but I wrote a few weeks ago, I finished writing a 32-page evangelism booklet that we want to pass out next summer about how a Hasidic family rescues a dog and in the process finds redemption. So pray for this, that we can find the funds to be able to have it printed out by next summer. But I'm going to have it over here so you can look at it for yourself. And so just pray for that. But why am I so obsessed with reaching the Hasidic people? And I'm almost finished. Because of the reality and the needs they have for Messiah Jesus. And this is my last slide. Because you know the statistic, about 97% of all Jewish people do not have Messiah Jesus. But in the Hasidic community, 99.5% have never heard the gospel of Messiah Jesus. And they are the fastest growing group of Jewish people in the world due to their 8 to 14 children. And by 2050, they will be the largest group of all Jewish people in the world. And the Hasidim face more anti-Semitism more than any other Jewish group in the world because they are so overtly Jewish. And if a Hasidim leaves the community, most become atheists because they don't believe they have any other choice. They need to know they have a choice, and his name is Yeshua. But how will they know, as Romans 10 tells us, unless someone tells them? And by the way, I told you that I live in a community, I live in an area where there's always about 10 to 20,000. And in the summer, that blossoms to about 125,000. Aside from me, how many other missionaries to the Hasidic Jewish community do you think there are? Exactly. I am all by myself. I need your prayers. I need your support. But most of all, the Hasidim need Yeshua. Is it you?